me, Renata Castro. Hi, Renata. She's joining us as well tonight. How are you, Renata?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here at Newsroom Live. I was just talking with political analyst Brian Sobel, who's also here on the screen with you. You're both sharing the screen because we felt in the newsroom in our afternoon editorial meeting when we were discussing how to approach the topic here on Newsroom Live. As you can imagine, it's a big headline for us, that we should have two perspectives, the immigration perspective and also the political perspective. Renata, first of all, what are your thoughts on this announcement, this public announcement on social media by the president, and on the shift in terms of what seemed to be a very cordial relationship between the president and Gnome, especially early on during his second time in the Oval Office. So when the president first stepped into the Oval Office over a year ago now, I mean, Gnome was his pick to carry out mostly a lot of work with the mass deportation agenda. And I say mostly because obviously there's other entities, notably Borders are Tom Homan is part of that as well. But she's undergone a lot of scrutiny.
Yeah, as I was in the backstage waiting to come on, I was listening to the political analyst very brilliantly pointing out some things about the way Trump chooses his allies and positions them. And as an attorney, my very first thought was, yes, this is likely in retaliation for her very public combat in Congress a couple of days ago. But we also saw Pam Bondi have a very similar performance, a lot more combative, but Pam Bondi is still in office. So what is different about Kristi Noem, and why is she not in office? In my analysis, my legal analysis, we're seeing the Supreme Court really side with Trump, and federal judges in general really take a stand against some of the excesses that the federal government is engaging in immigration law. They're just saying, there are violations of due process, and we won't stand for that. However, one page we can take from Trump's first term is that there comes a point in his strategy that he just starts churning through allies. And my suspicion is that we have just started the Hunger Games of the Trump cabinet, and Kristi Noem was just the first casualty of many to come in the next few months.
Now, what are your thoughts from the immigration perspective? Because obviously some of her critics are immigration advocates or people, Renata, that you deal with every day, probably family members of your clients. So when we look at the scrutiny that Gnome was subject of, whether it was warranted or not, what is the sentiment amongst her critics?
I think that most people, even those who voted for Trump, especially if they're lawyers or involved in academia or really have an appreciation for facts, their concern is that Kristi Noem really displayed a level of lack of knowledge and incompetence for her position. Forget about the immigration debate and where people may fall on that. Her lack of knowledge of the facts and really a self-centeredness when we were approaching very important facts was a major area of concern for lawyers, for judges, and for members of the House and the Senate. Now, we don't know who's going to come in. Well, we don't know how the next person is going to act. So there is a saying in Spanish that is better the devil you know than the devil you have yet to meet. And as immigration attorneys, we are apprehensive because what Kristi Noem did was run a department that was out of control. Budgets were not being respected. Laws were just being shrugged over. But we don't know how much worse it can get. And I have a feeling it's about to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Interesting, though, Brian, I want to have you weigh in on this from your political analysis, Brian. It seems, though, like the president is trying to get things under control. We know that he called for de-escalation in Minnesota. We know that the president is making a decision, which, Brian, in your opinion, you said is probably due to the scrutiny. So what do you make, or what are your thoughts about what the next person would bring to the table? Do you think it could get, as Renata put it, more intense to heighten scrutiny, or do you think this is a de-escalation strategy?
Anything's possible, and Renata makes a good point. I would say, however, that Markwayne Mullin is a 10-year veteran of the House of Representatives, 3 years in the Senate. He knows senators. He's popular among Republican senators and among Democrat senators. And so I think the choice, this particular choice, was to kind of get in the middle of all of the controversy at DHS and to find somebody that can provide stability in that interaction between the political arm and the administration and Congress. And so I look at it as Trump's way of saying, hey, I'm going to give you somebody you know really well, and you guys sort it out. But we're done with the theatrics of Kristi Noem.
So you do think that in a way this is an effort to calm things down then?
Absolutely.
So yes. It's interesting because you mentioned Senator Markwayne Mullin, respected, as you said, by both sides when it comes to the political aisles. He talked about his relationship with the president in a news conference today. He said that he was surprised by this call to this next job, but he said he talks to the president every day. So one would imagine they have a good relationship. Of course, the president isn't going to put anyone in a key position that he doesn't respect or have a good relationship with. So it seems like this choice, Brian, you think is maybe a good one given the climate?
Yes, you're taking the junior senator from Oklahoma, and basically he's truncating his political career. He will now move to a different kind of position, so he's taking a huge professional risk. So that I think speaks to his loyalty to the president, and I think the loyalty goes both ways with Donald Trump. But I think Donald Trump is attempting to put somebody in place who understands the politics of Washington quite clearly. And that was not Kristi Noem, who comes out of the Dakotas and ends up as head of DHS.
You know, getting back to what Renata noted, though, immigration attorney Renata Castro also live with us tonight, as well as political analyst Brian Sobel. We're talking about the president deciding that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem will not hold that title anymore. For those of you just joining us here on Newsroom Live, you know, when we talk about the concerns, Renata, that you point out, could things get worse? That really just kind of is backed by the fear in the migrant immigrant community, and the fear by extension that people close to your clients and others in their situation may have because of the climate now. So the idea, could things get worse, Renata, really plays into what we've been reporting on when it comes to immigration overall in this country right now, with the administration's efforts to carry out mass deportations.
One thing that I read today, as you know, I think all of us were caught off guard with these news of, Kristi Noem's, parting of ways and joining Marvel's casting of the Shield of America, because I think we were all so surprised over, I should say that I was very surprised at how fast things developed today. I did some very preliminary digging into the new Secretary of DHS, and I was very surprised to see that he has some very significant shareholdings of companies which are direct service providers to DHS, some that are involved in the procurement of warehouse facilities for the detention of migrants. And, we're not talking about, a few shares that you trade on the penny stock floor. We're talking about share holdings of about $150,000 each. If you think about the salary of a member of Congress, that's a significant amount of money. About 650,000 or 750,000 in shares in different companies which provide direct services and which have financially benefited from the immigration chaos that we have seen. But another thing that will play a factor in all of this, and I have to point out, is in the last few days, we have seen some precedent decisions come out of the Board of Immigration Appeals, basically eroding appellate rights for migrants, in addition to a decision that came out yesterday from the Supreme Court, which has been very neutral when it comes to taking a position in relation to the acts of the federal government in violation of due process rights and other rights that not only migrants, but individuals in the United States have. And in my opinion and experience, we will see this fight really play out in court, but I don't see the situation getting any better for migrants just because we had a change in casting.
So I want to ask you, Brian, in your political analysis, though, you noted that you believe that this is an effort by the president to kind of calm things down, put somebody in there, as you said, with his next choice being Senator Markwayne Mullin, that is kind of good. I don't remember the term you used exactly, but with both sides. I mean, he's a Republican, of course, but, you know, he's good with the Democrats to kind of have some bridging is what you're saying, right? So given that, do you think that that has anything to do with the fact that not here on home turf, but obviously overseas, we're dealing with escalating problems, specifically Iran? I mean, is there an idea like to calm things down maybe here on the home front, or do you think that these are two separate things?
I think they're two separate things. I think he's being brought in as an administrator to try to calm the waters. Renata makes very interesting points. I don't know whether this solves the problem by any stretch, but I think the president's feeling is that he's bringing in more competent leadership, and we will see whether it works out. Over time, you know, the president has a heck of a lot on his plate, a lot of agenda items, and this is just one of them. And I think, again, the core of it is that he lost confidence in Kristi Noem. And we know from history that when Donald Trump loses confidence in you, you are gone, and you're gone really quickly.
So, Brian, you think this is more specifically about Kristi Noem and her execution in the role?
Yes.
Versus calming things down here on home with one topic because things are escalating on another front. You think that politically, in terms of a strategy, this just has to do with Kristi Noem and the way she executed in the role?
Well, I think it has to do with the way that she ran the Department of Homeland Security, which, by the way, setting immigration aside just for a moment, that department has about 400 responsibilities. And we focus on, say, immigration because it's obviously something that is societally very, very important to discuss.
Right.
But the Department of Homeland Security has a vast number of responsibilities.
Right.
And whether Kristi Noem could put her arms around that vast bureaucracy is the question. So I think Donald Trump made the decision that, hey, I need a different administrator there who has a broader ability to see the bigger picture.
To work within that role, heading up the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you, political analyst Brian Sobel with us tonight, immigration attorney Renata Castro with us tonight. We appreciate you both. Thanks for being here at Newsroom Live.